It is Monday, January 19th, 2026. This is NHL Wraparound Short Shifts. Vic Morren, Neil Smith. The standings continue to be tight, and I think a great celebration of what hockey was all about came on Saturday, and it was Hockey Day in Canada. All 7 teams were in action, 3 head-to-head matchups. 6 of the 7 teams got points. If you can guess the team that didn't get a point, you don't get a gold star because it was too obvious. But nonetheless, some scintillating action over the weekend.
It really was, and that's a great day in Canada. They love that. They love the fact that it's done in a smaller town someplace in Canada, and the snowing in the background, the TV set for Hockey Night in Canada, folks, was really good. So it's always a fun day for everybody to watch that, and all the teams in action, as you said. All 7 in action. Hard to have more than 3 go head-to-head.
That's right. That's the way the math worked out. Hockey Day in Canada was in Moncton, New Brunswick, which had a long-time connection with the Calgary Flames, and they started the day off with a 4-2 win over the New York Islanders, who are coming off a 1-0 win at Edmonton on Thursday. So, as you so often like to say, you just can't predict these things from night to night.
Well, who would ever think that the Edmonton Oilers wouldn't be able to score at home against the Islanders? Like, it doesn't make any sense when you think about it, but it's true. That's what happened.
The 2 games at 7 o'clock were phenomenal watches. Toronto beats Winnipeg 4-3 in overtime. The Leafs are 9-1-3 in their last 13. The win for the Leafs snapped Winnipeg's 4-game winning streak. And if you remember, on New Year's Day, the Jets had leads of 4-1 and 5-4 and lost 6-5 to Toronto in regulation. And then on Saturday, they led 3-1 in the third period, but Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Bobby McMahon got the game sent to overtime. And then Max Domi on a great feed from Auston Matthews, and you could see Matthews just starting to enjoy the game again, and it's almost looking like he's kind of reveling in his role as captain finally.
Yeah, and that pass that he made to Domi was phenomenal. It was great. It's something that you don't often see Auston Matthews do, and it was so good that Hellebuck ended up inside the net, and the best goalie in the league ended up inside the net because they just handcuffed him on that play, and it was a great play by Matthews. Most people would think he would shoot in that situation. He didn't, and I'm sure that's what Hellebuck thought.
Yeah.
But he put it over to Domi, who lifted it over Hellebuck for the win.
But not to be outdone, the Montreal-Ottawa game, and this was a contest that the Senators trailed 2-0 early and then led 5-3 late. But goals by Juraj Slafkovsky and Alexander Carrier, $1.05 apart in the final 5 minutes, forced the overtime. And Cole Caulfield, with his 4th overtime goal of the season to win it. After the game, our buddy Craig Button from TSN said that the Senators' goaltending is beyond bad. And Levi Merilainen, 6 goals against on 19 shots, and I would say 3 or 4 of those were actually stoppable. But then the Senators have to go out and play a back-to-back. 22 hours later, head down to Detroit, and James Reimer gets the start in goal. It's his first game since April 17th of 2025 while playing for the Sabres. He made 30 saves, and he gave the Senators a chance to win in the Motor City, but Alex DeBrincat gets the game winner in overtime.
And isn't it amazing that the Ottawa Senators got beat 2 days in a row by diminutive forwards that can really shoot the puck? Cole Caulfield put it right through the goalie, and then DeBrincat with an amazing shot to win it. The next day, Ottawa gets 2 points out of the 4 that are possible. It's not bad. It's not bad to get 2 out of 4. It's 500, but they were both games that they could have won.
I want to bring you back to the fans in both Winnipeg and Ottawa, and you are certainly very familiar with this. as a Ranger GM, going into Nassau Coliseum, going into Meadowlands where the Devils played, and having the advantage of being the visiting team, but it's like playing at home. How much of an advantage do the Maple Leafs and the Canadiens have playing in Winnipeg and Ottawa, respectively, where so much of the crowd is in their favor?
Yeah, and Toronto gets that everywhere they go, basically in Canada. Toronto is the New York of Canada. And so everybody, the generations have followed the Leafs.
Sure.
They were the first Canadian team with Montreal Canadiens, I might add. But as Scotty Bowman told us when we had him on the show, the Montreal Canadiens were the French team. The Montreal Maroons were the English team way back when. And so, yeah, it's Toronto has an unbelievable following all over Canada and even in the United States. They're an original six team. But in Ottawa or in Buffalo, which is close to Toronto, obviously, they outnumber the hometown fans, and at least vocally they do.
It sounded 50-50 at worst for the visitors, and that's got to suck for the home team, knowing that you think you've got your fans behind you and you find out that half of them are for the other team.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of that game I was at last year when Ovechkin scored his triumphant goal that broke Wayne Gretzky's record. And everybody in the building was cheering for Washington and cheering for Ovechkin. So imagine being Sorokin and knowing, like, okay, you let this goal in and everybody's happy in your home building.
It's the beauty of the game in some way, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's what makes a regular season bearable.
Here's something that's unbearable. The Vancouver Canucks home record, which is dropped to 4-13-3. And the last of the Canadian matchups was the late game on Saturday. Edmonton with a 6-0 win over the Canucks. All 6 goals scored in the second period. They were one of 3 teams to score 5+ goals in a period this weekend. Hey, how about Zach Hyman? 15 goals in his last 19 games. Because he didn't start the season, coming off the injury that he suffered in the conference final last year against Dallas, there are now calls for him to replace Braden Point if Point can't make the Olympics.
Well, and it's a good call. I mean, Zach Hyman's a great goal scorer. He has been wonderful with the Edmonton Oilers after leaving the Toronto Maple Leafs and signing as a free agent with Edmonton. I mean, if they were to replace Braden Point, which isn't a certainty yet, Hyman would certainly be a adequate addition.
And Hyman continues to make his case for the Canadian Olympic team, should a spot be made available, by scoring 2 goals in Sunday's win against St. Louis, which was also the 1,000th career game for Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and he celebrated by scoring the first goal of the game for Edmonton. One other note for the Oilers, Leon Draisaitl taking a leave of absence due to a family illness, so he was flying home to Germany, so he missed both games over the weekend against Vancouver and St. Louis. He is expected to return to the team later this week. So let's try to wrap our head around a couple of games, I think 3 altogether, that I'm going to try to intertwine here. On Friday, Carolina wipes out the Florida Panthers 9-1. And if you remember, in their 2 earlier meetings this season, the Hurricanes had blown multiple goal leads in the third period and lost. In this one, they led 3-1 heading to the third period and wanted to make sure that history would not repeat, because they scored 6 times against Florida. Sergei Bobrovsky in for all 9 goals, and this certainly harkens back memories to Jacob Markstrom having to play at UBS Arena when they lost to the Islanders 9-0. But anyway, Nikolai Ehlers, his 6th career hat trick and an assist. 9 players on the Hurricanes, multiple point games that night. But then the Panthers, 24 hours later, turn around, head up to Washington. Daniel Tarasov plays in goal, and the Panthers win 5-2. Florida is in wild card 5, starting the week, 4 points out of the second wild card, Brad Marchand and Matthew Tkachuk, nearing their returns.
They are saying that Matthew Tkachuk might even play this coming week. That'll be something. If he can get back into the lineup for the Panthers, that will really add something for sure to the Panther team, who's done a marvelous job of staying in contention while having these injuries to Barkov and Tkachuk and Seth Jones, and you can go on and on. And the other thing about Bobrovsky staying in for all 9, Paul Maurice and Sergei Bobrovsky know each other up, down, and sideways. So I'm sure that Paul Maurice leaving him in was not thought of as anything other than it's a bad game for the team and we move on.
And there is something to say about the championship pedigree in Florida, that they could be beaten so decisively and then turn around and beat a quality team the very next night.
Yeah, on a back-to-back, having to travel and having played the day before and then coming in and getting enough gumption to go in and beat Washington, who's not an easy team to beat and certainly not at home. All hats are tipped to the Florida Panthers.
Well, speaking of hats, I wasn't done with the Hurricanes yet because they finished their back-to-back with a win Saturday in New Jersey. Andrei Svechnikov with a hat trick in that game. So the Hurricanes with 3-goal games on consecutive nights. So let's now talk about the Devils and the Capitals. New Jersey is wild card 9, only ahead of the Rangers, and the Capitals wild card 4 after winning the East during the regular season last year. We thought the Capitals would take a step back. We said it in our summer callers. We've maintained it all season long that so many things went right for them last year. And right now, they're struggling because they had consecutive losses at home to San Jose and the Panthers.
But we thought that the Devils would be good this year in this conference and in this division when we looked at it in the summer, and they're anything but that. And a huge goal minus in their goal differential. I think it's minus 22 last time I looked at the standings.
That's correct.
That's going to be hard to overcome. I just want to say to you that remember that 95% of the time, the teams that are a plus in goal differential make the playoffs. 95% of the time, the teams that are a negative in goal differential miss the playoffs. So that means that the Devils have to make up for that minus 22 by the end of the season, and we're 50 games into the season.
New Jersey and Washington were clubs that we both had penciled in as playoff teams at the start of the year. And right now, it's going to be a struggle, certainly for Jersey, but Washington as well.
Well, and you know what? There's some teams that we said we're not going to make the playoffs who are in playoff position. So that's what's happened. And we'll see. I mean, there's 32 games or 33 or 34, whoever, depending on how many you've played, left in the season. Things can change. And Vic, particularly after an Olympic break, things can really change because teams will come back and be hot. Teams will come back and be very cold. That's just the way it goes. The layoff will help teams and it will hurt teams.
I feel that given the closeness for the mid-range teams in both conferences, it's going to be a matter of which team or teams can manage to put an 8-2 run together in the final 20 that are going to be the ones that are going to qualify in and around the bubble.
Absolutely. They're going to have to say to their team, to the players, when you get back from the Olympic break, it's completely pedal to the metal the rest of the season. And if you can put together a streak and if you can do that, you can make it. There's very few teams, and there are some, but there are very few that are out of it right now.
And of course, there's going to be that injury intangible, which nobody can foresee what is going to happen. And that is certainly going to play a role in this as well.
Oh, absolutely. There's going to be injuries during the Olympics that are going to carry over into the NHL schedule. And that's the chance you take when, as a league, you agree to go into a tournament that's not got anything to do with your league play.
32 GMs will be holding their breath. A couple of long streaks came to an end over the weekend. The Tampa Bay Lightning winning streak ended at 11. A 3-2 shootout loss in St. Louis on Friday. Joel Hofer made 34 saves in that one. However, they keep their unbeaten streak intact by beating Dallas 4-1 on Sunday. You talk about locking a team down. We see all of these teams, and we watch almost every game that's played in the NHL. I don't think there's a team more befuddling than the Dallas Stars, because what Tampa Bay did in the third period was clinical in terms of shutting down a team that is strong from goal out, but were made to look relatively listless. Only 2 shots on goal in the third period.
They played a perfect road game against Dallas in Dallas. And really, it was so disappointing to see that there was so little pushback by the Stars at home against the Lightning. And the Lightning are a good team. They're great coaching. They have great players. But still, Dallas at home should have had a little bit more emotion in their game. And I thought really pushed a lot harder than they did.
The Lightning, a league best 18-4-4 on the road. Meanwhile, the Colorado Avalanche lost their first regulation game at home this year. They are now 19-1-3, 7-3 against Nashville. Ryan O'Reilly picking up his 7th career hat trick plus an assist. We have seen Nashville as one of those teams that we wrote off early in the season. We looked at the roster. We looked at the body language of this team, and it wasn't very good. And to go in and throw up a 7th spot against the best defensive team in the NHL shows that they are on the move. However, things weren't as good the next night in Vegas.
No, and you know what? Sometimes these great teams like Colorado, the Pittsburgh Penguins of 93, all of a sudden they let down versus maybe a weaker team, and you're stunned at how Nashville can go in and beat Colorado in Colorado. But this stuff happens, and this is what we've said over and over and over again. You cannot predict the winners in this league. You can try hard, but you never know what's going to happen.
Thought that there was going to be more giant killing for the Predators in Vegas because they led 1-0 late in the second period. The Golden Knights get a pair, and then they are the third team this weekend with a 5-goal plus period, scoring a handful in the third. Mark Stone, goals in 10 out of his last 11. So forgive us for repeating ourselves here. The guy is an absolute marvel as captain of the Golden Knights. You can't look away from it.
Oh, and what a great leader. And he shows up and plays hard and leads that team. I mean, Mark Stone is a guy that you've got to have the utmost respect for the way he plays this game.
How about the Boston Bruins? 8 out of their last 9. 5-2 win in Chicago on Saturday. This is a club that has been doing it by committee all year long. We've complimented the job that Marco Sturm has done. The balanced scoring, Jeremy Swayman and Jonas Korpisalo, both doing outstanding work this season. And remember something else. During the course of this streak, Morgan Geekie, who got off to that phenomenal start, has not scored a goal since December 20th.
You know, in the offseason, we were saying this is going to be Pasternak and a bunch of people we don't even know. Pasternak is going to be the only good player on this team. Then all of a sudden, Morgan Geekie started off so well, and we said Don Sweeney deserves all the credit in the world. He must have seen this. He signed Geekie to that long, good contract. Then he went dry, and the Bruins didn't stop. They keep going. As you said, Geekie hasn't scored since December 20th, and they're still going. So, you know what? Marco Sturm, he's got them listening. He's got them playing. He's got the messages getting through. The game plan is right. I mean, this is really an amazing season for the Bruins to this point, in that they weren't expected to be very good. And Sturm deserves consideration. Probably won't get it. for the Jack Adams Award.
It's still precarious despite this streak, and we've seen that with a lot of teams this year, that they go on these runs, but they're barely in a playoff spot. And the Bruins open the week wild card 1, 58 points, 1 more than the Buffalo Sabres, and 2 more than the Toronto Maple Leafs. Let's move over to the Western Conference. And in a game between two teams that are going to likely battle for wild card positions, the Mammoth beat Seattle 6-3. Nate Schmidt comes over from Florida, fresh off a Stanley Cup. Second career 4-point game. Gets the game-winning goal with 5:30 left. And his post-game interview, I think, said everything that you needed to know about the enthusiasm of the NHL's newest market. They whooped it up with the fans, and it was just a great thing to listen to.
And it's great for Salt Lake City to have a competitive team. I'm sure Phoenix is looking at this and wishing, why not us? Why not us? But the Mammoth are doing a good job. But we'd predicted this, so Vic. I mean, we had said they're a team that's coming up. They've got good young players that are only getting better. So good. The Mammoth are doing well. Nate Schmidt, I thought, was a great signing. When they signed him, he was really good for Florida, and he brings a winning pedigree into the locker room.
Mammoth enter the week. First wild card in the West. The Kraken are third in the Pacific. But ironically, they are tied in points with all three California clubs, the Sharks, the Ducks, and the Kings.
Well, everything is so close still to this time here in January. It's really hard to understand.
So in the brilliance of the way we do things here, we're going to talk about the Kings and the Ducks. Anaheim sweeps the 2 games over the weekend. On Friday, the Ducks overcame a 2-0 second period deficit in Los Angeles to win in a shootout. And then on Saturday, and these are the little things that wind up costing you at the end of the season. And you could say that for the Kings, okay, this is only game 48 and we've got 34 more games left. But remember that you lost 2 games to the Ducks. They got 4 points when they probably shouldn't have had any. So on Saturday, the Kings have the first 6 power plays of the game, including 5 in a row in the second period. They did score a goal on an extended 5-on-3. But after all of those power plays, they only had 11 shots on goal for the entire game, not their power plays, for the entire game. And while Anaheim did get the last 3 power plays in that game, it did go to overtime. And in the overtime, one of the great hustle plays, and something that I think you need to go back and watch to really appreciate how special this play was. Jackson Lacombe missed the net in overtime, far side. He came all the way up the boards. Kevin Fiala skated into it, looked like he was going to have a breakaway. And Beckett Seneca lifted his stick, no hooking or anything like that, stripped him of the puck, flung it up the boards, and there was Mikael Granlund to pick it up, come in on a 2-on-1, and score the overtime winner. So Anaheim, which had a lot of problems early part of this month, now turned it around and won 3 straight.
And that was an amazing play by Seneca, going back, catching Fiala, and in one motion, not only taking the puck, but passing the puck in a sweeping motion up to Granlund, which ended up in the overtime winning goal. It was a fabulous play by the young kid. The Kings just can't score. They can't shoot. I don't know what the heck. I don't know how they're going to make the playoffs when you can't score, and they cannot score.
I got to tell you something. We don't get on officials too often, but the first 2 periods of this game was decidedly in favor of Los Angeles in terms of officiating, because it seemed that everything was getting called against the Ducks, and there were some things that could have been called against the Kings that weren't. And of course, that did happen later in the game, but it wasn't exactly even for the first 40 minutes.
I guess it all evens out at the end of the day. The Ducks win the game, and they got those late power plays. So you move on and stuff happens.
Anaheim did have a power play in the overtime, although the game-winning goal came at even strength. One other note concerning the Ducks, forward Leo Carlsson had a procedure on his left thigh. He is expected to miss 3 to 5 weeks, and that will put his participation in the Olympics with the Swedish team in doubt. So often, Neil, we have talked about teams that take oxygen out of the room. We had targeted Toronto specifically, really for the better part of the 2 years that we have been doing this. But they've now been replaced by the New York Rangers because on Friday, Chris Drury, GM, sent out a letter to the fans telling them that essentially we're going to retool. That's that fun semantics term that kind of replaces rebuild, and it's supposed to give people the thought that we're not rebuilding, we're retooling, and people are supposed to buy into that, thinking that the process is going to be quicker. This is the second time in 8 years that this has come out of New York. They did it in 2018. It came from Jeff Gorton and John Davidson. The Blackhawks did it in 2020, and only now are they starting to really see a little bit of an uptick in terms of the promise of that franchise. But with the Rangers, I read the note. It looked markedly the same. And the first impression that I have was that this is damage control once the damage has already been done.
This is them saying, well, let's try what we tried in 2018 when we're having this horrible year. Let's send out the same type of thing that we did in appeal to the fans that we did in 2018 and ask them to be patient while we change things around and we don't sign Artemi Panarin and we move on from certain players and we quote unquote retool. I think it perhaps is just a method to try to keep the fans happy while they go through a miserable season.
Supposedly there were 3 meetings. First with the entire team, then with the leadership group, and then Panarin, specifically speaking with Chris Drury, being told that he is not being extended. And of course, he goes out, has a good game in Philadelphia, that the Rangers managed to break their losing streak and win against a Flyers team that has their own struggles going. But where do you start here? I mean, this is a hard place if you're a GM and you've made the conference finals in 22 and 24. You've essentially dismantled your own club. I don't know if there's a quick fix in order to try to get this thing back on the rails. They're more than likely going to be a lottery team. They do have 2 first-round picks this year, the second coming from Carolina in the AndreMiller deal. But I think the reality is this doesn't feel like a short path back to respectability.
No, it's not going to be. They don't have the young players on the team. They don't have the young players coming. This is going to last for a while. This is going to be not months. This is going to be seasons.
Stay tuned, because it's certainly not going to be boring around the trade deadline and probably well before that in the Big Apple. Some personnel notes and a scary scene in Edmonton Sunday evening when Blues forward Oskar Sundqvist suffered a skate cut above his left ankle when he got tangled with Connor McDavid in the Blues 5-0 loss to the Oilers. After the game, head coach Jim Montgomery said that the cut, while deep, did miss the Achilles tendon. So while Sundqvist is going to be out for a little while, it is not expected to be a season-ending injury. Elsewhere, Matt Boldy, the Minnesota Wild, on IR, suffered a lower body injury in the loss to Winnipeg last Thursday. Justin Sordev, the Washington Capitals, on IR with an upper body injury. He was hurt in the loss against Nashville on January 11th. He's missed the last 3 games, but he is back skating with the club in a non-contact jersey. The aforementioned Philadelphia Flyers lost forward Rodrigo Abels On Saturday, in their loss against the Rangers, his right leg got caught under him, and he has been placed on IR. And Rasmus Ristolainen, defenseman, is on IR with an upper body injury retroactive to January 12th. He missed the first 31 games of this season before playing 13 straight. He has now missed the last 3, but could rejoin the team on the Flyers' upcoming road trip to Vegas, Utah, and Colorado. Henry Jokiharju, defenseman for the Boston Bruins, is taking a personal leave of absence. He played 23 minutes and 7 seconds in the Bruins' win in Chicago on Saturday. And on the return front, Miro Heiskanen, defenseman for the Dallas Stars, returned to the lineup in the loss to Tampa Bay after missing 2 games for personal reasons. And Will Smith came back in the Sharks' loss in Detroit on Friday after missing 13 games. He scored a goal in that one. And a major trade coming down Sunday evening. It's been rumored for some time that Calgary Flames' #1 defenseman, Rasmus Andersson, would be on the move. And he heads to the Vegas Golden Knights, who always seem to get into the middle of these big deals. In exchange for Andersson, the Flames will receive defenseman Zach Whitecloud, college prospect Abram Wiebe, a 2027 first-round pick, and a conditional 2028 second-round pick, which will become a first-rounder if Vegas wins the Stanley Cup this year. The Flames will retain 50% of Andersson's salary.
This is a typical deal of the Vegas Golden Knights. Whatever big fish is out there and available, they seem to be able to land him, like with Jack Eichel, which brought them a Stanley Cup. Rasmus Andersson is the biggest fish of this year's trade deadline. It seemed like we've been talking about him since the beginning of the season. But he's also a perfect fit to go in and replace Pietrangelo, who looks like his career is over on the blue line for Vegas Golden Knights, or so he said himself.
And a little under the radar trade took place on Friday, where the Anaheim Ducks acquired forward Jeffrey Viel from Boston for a 4th-round pick. Pat Verbeek wanted to get a little bit more edge up front with his team, and he had one hell of a fight with Sammy Helenius of the Kings in the game on Saturday.
So I guess Pat Verbeek is making sure that he's got all his guys protected and that these little ducklings won't get into any trouble.
Well, Viel more than held his own because he was giving up about 15 pounds and 5 inches to Helenius in that one. We have a passing to report on Saturday. Phil Goyette died at the age of 92. Played 940 games with the Canadiens, Rangers, Blues, and Sabres. He's a 4-time Stanley Cup winner, having won with Montreal between 1957 and 1960. He's a Lady Big Trophy winner in 1970 with the Blues. And the first ever coach of the New York Islanders. And, Neil, you know we're getting old when we see players in their 90s passing, and we saw them play in person.
Oh, absolutely. But that's what everybody's going to have to go through in their lifetime. But it's almost a trivia question to ask people who was the first ever coach for the New York Islanders. And the name is Phil Goyette. Phil Goyette got fired during that first horrible season that the Islanders had because they had lost most of their guys to the World Hockey Association. And the trivia question that follows that is, who stepped in and coached for the rest of the season that year for the New York Islanders? Do you know that answer?
Is it Earl Ingerfield?
You're right.
Ooh.
There you go. And for that, you get a box of cookies.
Maybe a gold star. Who knows? What are you looking forward to Monday and Tuesday?
Well, Monday, Buffalo at Carolina. Is Buffalo for real? Are they still going to keep going? Are they not? They're playing a tough opponent in Carolina. Also on Monday, the 3 New York teams, meaning the Islanders, Devils, and Rangers, all play in the West. And Is somebody going to get out of this funk? I mean, the Islanders are not in a funk. Let's make that clear. But the Devils, we expected a lot more out of them. The Rangers, I don't know what we could expect. They're just god-awful. Those are the games that I'm looking at, along with, of course, Winnipeg at Chicago, which is Jonathan Toews, the captain of the Blackhawks, captain for 3 Stanley Cups. It's his first game back at the United Center since April 13th, 2023.
Anything on Tuesday?
Nothing other than a couple of back-to-backs for the New Jersey Devils and the New York Rangers out west, and see how they do. But what about you?
I've got Ottawa at Columbus, and the Blue Jackets have won 3 straight under Rick Bowness, and who was the first ever coach for the Ottawa Senators?
Rick Bowness.
It's beautiful the way this all comes together. And also Boston at Dallas. 2 teams headed in opposite directions, and they're directions that we didn't expect either club to be going in.
Boston is a great positive for them, and Dallas, who we all expected to be a Stanley Cup contender, is just sort of treading water during the season.
I think perhaps it's just a mid-season malaise that they are having. I would say 80 to 90% sure that they're going to play Minnesota in the first round, and their play is reflecting that.
Yeah, but I don't think players look at the standings that hard and go, oh, well, we're going to play Minnesota in the first round, so we don't need to go hard.
Yeah.
They got to play hard all season, or you can't just turn it on and turn it off. So we'll see what Glenn Gulletson can do to turn the team around to get the potential out of them that they have.
We are available on all podcast platforms. If you listen to us on Apple or Spotify, please write us a review. And if you tune into us on YouTube, please subscribe. Check out NHLWraparound.com. In our blog section, we have Patrick Hoffman's latest on the Rangers, Islanders, and Devils. Neil's picks, which continue to remain on fire. So please check out our website. Give us a little feedback on that as well.
Reach either of us at our email address, which is vic@nhlwraparound.com or neil@nhlwraparound.com. What do you like, what you don't like, what you would like to see us do here, just anything at all. We just like to hear from you.
And remember, we will be doing a New York-centric type show around the Olympics concerning the Rangers, Islanders, and Devils. So we're going to be fielding questions from fans of all 3 teams, and that will be the basis of the show. So please, write us, ask your questions. Hopefully we'll give you some answers. Or Smith, you'll give us answers.
Well, they might not be the right ones, but I'll give you answers.
Short shifts coming up on Wednesday. Until then, enjoy the hockey Monday and Tuesday.